Welcome to episode 122 of Arraycast. I'm your host, Connor, and today with us we have our, for the moment, only co-host, or I guess panelist, and therefore co-host, Adam. And I guess I totally messed that up. We're supposed to go around and do brief introductions. And so
well, now they know who I am.
So. Now they know who you are. But we will let you briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll hop into one or two announcements.
Okay, so as Connor said, I'm Adam. 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪𝗀 is my family name. Don't try to pronounce that. I work at Dialog. Been working for a decade at Dialog. I'm now the head of language design. That doesn't mean I do language design all the time, just sometimes. But I sort of have to sign off on language changes. I'm really interested in the whole language design aspect and all the possibilities there are, and especially when it comes to array languages, especially Avasonian languages, always lamenting the lack of array features in non-array languages.
Awesome. And I, as mentioned before, I'm Connor, host of Arraycast, massive fan of all the array languages, all the existing ones, all the future ones. And today we're going to be chatting about REPLs and IDEs. And we'll get to that in a sec. So I think we have a couple announcements. Adam, I think you've got one, and then I've got 1.5. So we'll go to you first.
It's a fairly minor thing, but there's the DINA, the Dialog North America meetup at the 27th of April, I think it is. And there's the program for what's going to be presented there is now up on the website, 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪.com/program in British spelling, the MME at the end.
Awesome. Links for that will be in the show notes / description in the future, not now, but if you're watching live. As always, well, not as always, since the second era of Arraycast has started, we are live on YouTube. And today is Monday, 23rd of March, so I think we haven't settled completely, but I think we're going to be doing this regularly on Mondays, but TBD. So that's one announcement out of the way. My 1.5 announcements are, so Adam doesn't even know about this, although actually maybe you were on the email. So I want to say a year ago, at least maybe 2 years ago, around the same time that Bob was working on like the special Ken Iverson interviews, like a blast from the past, Bob Bernecki, local to Toronto, reached out to us at the Arraycast and said that he was sitting on a ton of recordings from the 1991 and 1993 APL conferences. And skipping over some details, at some point I got a thumb drive with the digitized versions of these because I think they existed on, I don't know, VHS or whatever technology was used in the 90s. And we were supposed to find a way to publish those on YouTube. I think at one point we were going to do it on the Code Report channel, but we didn't end up doing that because I think I was just too busy. And Bob Bernecki reached out again and was sort of asking what's the status of this. And we now have this Arraycast channel. So long story long, my plan is every other week. So we're doing once every 2 weeks for Arraycast. In between, I think there's like 15 or 20 of these videos. One of these videos will drop. And that'll be exciting for those that are interested in older footage of array conferences. So I think the first one that we are going to be releasing is the 25-year panel perspective. It's got a couple different names. If you are like the internet sleuth of internet sleuths, I actually, while I was asking for some information to Gemini, it found a recording on someone's channel that had uploaded it, and the title of the video is something.mp4. So clearly they didn't put a ton of like effort into adding a description and whatnot. But anyways, you can find this on the internet, but a polished version will be uploaded a week from today, which I guess is actually a week because there's no post-processing in terms of the time. Anyway, so, and there will be some other talks. I think one of them is called Mastering J. There's a few different, one of them that I haven't actually watched yet, but I'm looking forward to watching when I edit it and upload it is J an APL ? Which I think is also the name of a paper. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Adam. Or there was a name of something like they had. Maybe this it was just a discussion, and that's what this is. Or
I prefer to say the original name of J was APL \??
Okay. Because there was a bunch of debate. We've talked about that in the past on the Arraycast when J was first born, whether or not it counted. Anyway, so look forward to future every other week's in between Arraycast episodes, at least for, a couple months, these videos that'll get uploaded. And the half announcement, we'll see if I can share my screen. This is less of an announcement and more of a teaser, which is why I'm calling it, I see. This kind of ruins because everyone's seeing the preview of all the other stuff I have on my computer. All right, so never again. And so this is I've been working on a YouTube video for like 2 weeks now. Shout out to Madeline, shout out to the folks on the 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪 Discord. But I've been wanting to make this video since Pearl Weekly Challenge 285, and we're on 366 this week. So that's close to like 100 weeks, which means it's almost like just under 2 years that I've wanted to make this YouTube video. I only started working on it a couple weeks ago. But the preview that I'll show is I decided I wanted a table, and I've made these kind of tables in the past where I show different primitives or even algorithm names in different languages, and then you just can kind of compare across languages what the different languages call these things. But the equivalent in an array language is to have the different primitives, and the reason I'm choosing 𝗦𝗢𝗪 as the baseline is they have the most number of primitives. So in terms of like you're trying to find one primitive and what they translate to in other primitives, the language with the most primitives is the best choice. And so if you hit a shortcut, which I won't tell folks yet, but this is live on Arraybox, it will bring up this beautiful table which shows the translations across the 6 languages that are supported. You can see there's a tiny little bug here. This subscript shouldn't be white. And the really cool thing is it's like, well, it's only showing the monadic ones. Well, if you click on the verb or the function, it'll toggle from monadic to dyadic. And then a nice little feature that I'm working on, I guess you can't click or else it gets rid of it, is if you hit C, it then color codes the ones that are, if it's 2 primitives, it gets yellow because 2 is fine. If it's 3 primitives, it gets orange. But if it's 4 or more, it gets red. And anyways, this is a cute feature. It's very much in beta because the primitives that you're looking at on scene are on the screen. And I guess for the audio listener, we're looking at first cell. Except this is a little bit broken now. It should say first cell, last cell, without split and mix. And I actually have to split into split and major cells. As Madeline pointed out, there's some slight differences.
I have other things that I want to remark here.
Yeah, and this is what I thought is like maybe a little like 10-minute mini episode inside of our REPL. And technically this is a REPL feature, is it not? So I mean, we're technically still on task. And I thought I really liked the tally behind. I don't know, what is it, Skinny Squad? I don't know what that character is.
It's called Squad.
Is it called Squad? I thought that was quite nice. And the comparison to Cap.
It only works on 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗆 1, though.
As Madeline pointed out, sometimes 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗆 1 is better. And it's actually my preferred index origin. But we'll save that for a whole other episode.
Oh, shots fired. But no, I mean, I also work like that. But if the first column is supposed to be first, right? Not
it should be first. Yeah, I don't know when that got changed.
That's a primitive. Why is it not APL's first primitive?
Oh, actually, wait. You know what happened here? This is actually, there's no bug here. I've just typed this incorrectly. So at some point, like switching between the languages, they have like the primitive translation. This just got messed up. So this is actually what it should be. And Madeline asked when I was asking questions about this, like, what is the relationship between all these? These are the primitives used for solving Pearl Weekly Challenge 285. So that's why I'm comparing like what you have access to when trying to solve that challenge.
But can you, that last is wrong, right? That's not last.
Last for what? We've got 6 languages here.
No, okay, I'm just talking about APL. That's what I know about. We can look at the other ones in a moment.
Okay, so dialogue APL is in the second row. Not that helps the audio listener.
There are different. Part of this problem here is like, what is the definition here? Last element in REPL order, and do you need to disclose it, unbox it, depending on your language, right? So the one you have currently on APL for last, that's the last cell one, not last. Last would be first of the reverse. Or first of the reverse of the REPL, if you want to be strict about multidimensional arrays. Are we talking vectors? Are we talking any dimensional arrays when it comes to first and last? But if you want to be really strict, it should be the first of the reverse of the first of the REPL of the reverse, right? Or something like that. First, well, you could either decide. It should be the You want to ravel, yeah. So the first of the reverse of the ravel, and is how you would do it, which you can't even do as a 3 train, right? So then you have to start composing. First cell is left tech, first axis reduction, and last cell is right tech, first axis reduction. That's 2 characters. Nobody ever writes like this.
So I mean, well, this is great. What do you call it? Food for thought and ideas for discussion, because the history of this, and this is part of the problem, folks. I'm a big part of the problem here. I tend to think in a small bubble that is a subset of the array language world, which is the rank 1 plus sometimes rank 2 world, which is a subset. And when I started constructing this, I didn't even have first cell and last cell. I just had first, last, dyadic without, split, and mix. And then as soon as I went to the 𝗦𝗢 Discord, because honestly, it's the 𝗦𝗢 is probably I have the biggest gaps in my knowledge. Maybe Jay, you can put up there as well. And so I went to the 𝗦𝗢.
Interesting though that the 𝗦𝗢 documentation and naming and so on assumes that. It assumes everything is just up 2 dimensions and calls it by that. So it talks about rows and columns, even though it's actually first axis, last axis type of thing.
Yeah, I have not observed that. But I mean, this is why I said I'm part of the problem, and that there's a problem here, is that when you think in like primarily rank 1, like a lot of times I'll say like, oh, it's just that. And then you'll go, no. Or, when Marshall was on the podcast, he'd be saying, oh, no, that's not technically correct, because there's like rank 1 world, there's like rank 2 world, then there's just arbitrarily ranked world, so all the ranks, and then there's nested arrays, which, like, if you're going to spell this correctly, a lot of the times my brain is like, oh, well, what you're looking at on screen works for rank 1s, therefore it's correct. But it's not. Yeah. It's like, if you're going to do the strictly correct, you have to consider nested arrays. You need to consider all the different ranked arrays. And that's it. It causes a problem in terms of like teaching, in that a lot of the times when people are solving small problems, they actually are in a rank 1 world. And so if you show them the strictly correct for all of the nested and the higher ranked arrays, so if you have some kind of BQN crate or, apple cart where you go there and you have the strictly correct thing and it shows, some 4 or 5 character ravel with the disclose or whatever, that is strictly correct. But it should have some like little toggle thing that is like, do you need this just for a rank 1 array, or are you solving for like a more general broad problem? Because
I just put multiple entries into apple cart and say, and the description says what the restrictions are, and also the syntax specification often has the restriction built into the names, right? So I'll call it, I can call it the Y if it's a general array, the right argument, and I will call it YS if it's a scalar, or YM if it's a matrix, YV if it's a vector.
Right.
So there are ways that you can sort of have that in there, and
you have to think about that though when you're going to different places where there's different varying levels of that kind of specificity, you don't end up necessarily getting all that. Anyways, the point being is that I came into this thinking about just in the context of the problem that I was solving. And then I realized, well, technically this is all, and like I said, split technically needs to be split into the split from Dialog APL, and then TinyApple has something called major cells. And anyway, so I will update this for what you say, but then I also maybe I should do that. I should add some little toggle that says like, do you want the strictly correct, or do you want the non-nested, non-higher ranks, just rank 1?
Yeah, I mean, that gets complicated, right? Because even something you will see a lot in APL code, modern APL code, is that people want to merge, say, a vector of vectors to be a flat vector, often like character vectors. So they'll just run an enlist on it. But that works in that case. It doesn't work in general. You can't just merge things using enlist, right? But that doesn't mean it's not idiomatic and normal and so on. So it's hard to do this. How does Arraybox do this? Does it just have a giant lookup table for primitives for every
basically
language? What it's
I basically it's been no secret that I built Arraybox entirely using AI tools. And so when I had this idea, the basics of the idea was like, all right, if I have a space separated primitives, they don't even really need to be space separated, I guess. Actually, they do in the sense that, well, they actually don't. Anyways, build a table that's got the languages on the left, the monadic and dyadic at the top that you can toggle, and it didn't look as nice at first, but you just ask it to change. And then I said initially just like reach for primitives if they exist. And I'd say it got like 75% of them correct, but then I'd have to go in and be like, that's wrong, this is wrong. But I mean, 75% is still, and that's the thing, is people say, it gets it wrong. But the point being is that's 75% of the work that I didn't have to do. And I just have to go and like review. I'd rather have, an intern that, made a bunch of mistakes and did most of the work for me. And then I just have to go clean things up. And then for the longer ones, like the 𝗡𝗢𝗧𝗘𝗦 and the 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗀𝘆 ones, I just manually input those. And so it's, I think there's a table called primitive-compare.js somewhere in the GitHub repo. So if people are more than welcome to go and either submit issues or even better, pull requests. Because like I said, I have not reviewed any of the primitives because I only asked for these ones, but it was just like, well, clearly you're going to want all of them in the future. I'll go do that for you. But I have not reviewed any of those. So I guarantee what's a random primitive that we don't have here? Let's just type in.
There's some complicated ones that will be.
No. Let's do something simple like iota, and let's iota and reverse, two of my favorite primitives. So let's see what happens. This looks.
First axis, last axis.
That's a good point because 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗪 actually doesn't have. They only have reverse first, correct?
Reverse first, so you have to do a rank 1 or something.
But if we change it to, look at that, lovely that, and also too, a few people in the 𝗦𝗛 Discord said that my coloring of the primitives in 𝗦𝗛 is cursed because I've reversed the blue-green coloring scheme from Kai's site. I made an executive decision for ArrayBox that I prefer blue because in the ambivalent languages, you just have to color basically all functions and verbs one of the colors. You're not able to disambiguate. And therefore, I chose blue because I think blue is a little less electric. And so it just looks better as like the more common color. And I'm not going to have 𝗦𝗛 go against the other 5 languages. So unfortunately, it will be cursed for some of you. But yes, you can see the color changing on the 𝗦𝗛 ones, which is quite nice. But I think this is right. But like also there's, like as you mentioned, the reverse first versus reverse. Also too, technically, is this accurate if some of them are 1 index versus 0 indexed? You got to put, there's always these like
nuance.
Yeah, a lot of nuance.
Do you give it a single element or a scale vector argument or a scalar argument or a multiple element vector argument? Right? Then the definitions are completely different between APL and J, for example.
Well, so here's a question. What would be because I just had an idea that if you could imagine under every single primitive there were 3 columns, one for like rank 1, one for all ranks, and one for nested. Is that the correct number of columns in order to capture? And then you could have
enough. You want like scalar on a scalar vector, higher maybe scalar vector matrix and nested. Maybe not all of them are valid in every combination.
But that's the point though. So that you'd have the columns, and so for the base one, that's the problem is though. Like I don't actually know what 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗪 does for. If you give it like a two character array, is that going to do the? I guess we can check right now. Two.
Yes. That's what you got the ArrayBox for.
All right, so it does have like the J behavior.
That's the dialog thing.
Or the dialog thing. Sorry. But that's the thing is like when you have behavior that exists in a language that's not 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗪, then how do you communicate? So it is very tricky. But you're saying that potentially it would be 4 columns, scalar. AKA, so rank 0, rank 1, rank 2, and nested.
Those are what I would do first, right? But that's
the thing is, as a begin, and that's another thing. Maybe we should dedicate a whole episode to that at some point. I've had this kind of mental model in the back of my head that I'd love to give, I would love someone else to give a talk on it. But the problem is I throw all these talk ideas out into the world, and no one ever does them. So I just end up having to do them. But I have this mental model of like the like karate belt system of like array language programming skill level. And so I am definitely not a black belt. I'm not a triple black belt. I'm not a double black belt. I don't know actually what the colors are. I'm not white. I know there's like purple and brown. So I'm somewhere, probably halfway to black belt. Maybe if you want to be generous, 70% or 75%. You are definitely at least a single, if not triple black belt in Dialog APL, but then even, in BQN and a lot of these other languages, like you might not say that for 𝗲𝗏 or all the array languages. But this is the reason I bring this up is that this 4-column idea is definitely not like a white belt. It's not a white belt like teaching topic. And I feel like if you're going to teach yourself online, which is what I did and a lot of folks do these days now because there's a cornucopia of resources across Dialogs docs and BQN docs and 𝗲𝗏 docs and the YouTube videos and Arraycast, you can get to like, I don't know what, like we should actually bring it up. Well, should I do it on a different screen? What is it? The karate belt colors. All right, here we go.
So you want to choose in the interface what's your level, and then we'll do it simplified.
Yeah. Well, I just
started doing a simplified APL in the APL challenge that we have running all the time.
Yeah.
So there we teach everything you need to know as you go along. But I've taken to simplifying the language. So I never or very rarely, I think never actually, teach the monetic and dyadic form of the same primitive. So I sort of pretend it's fixed APL. All right, that there's only, I just have to choose one of the two primitives in this round. In a different round, I could choose something else. I often avoid completely discussing operators. I just say their special syntax or avoid them altogether. Often avoiding nested arrays. Definitely avoiding all sort of overloads of things, and the syntax is simplified. And all of this to ease teaching. And you can always learn this edge cases and words and everything later. So that's basically that white belt, like the very first level you come in.
Well, so I realized I only shared a single window, so you can't see this, but I'm showing or if you go to the YouTube stream, you might be able to see it. But it's a white belt, yellow belt, orange belt, green belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, red belt, and black belt. So I would say I'm a blue belt or a purple belt. I don't know, somewhere in there. But there's still a bunch of stuff. And this is a perfect example of one of those things. It's the I don't want to say perfect knowledge of scalar vector matrix nested, but my default is not thinking in that mode at all. I think primarily in rank 1 when I use an outer product, sometimes rank 2, or if the problem calls for it, rank 2. But I'm rarely ever thinking in rank 3. And I know I've seen Marshall do some triple outer products or double outer products where he goes up to rank 3 or 4. And that's just a tool in his tool belt that he does for some kind of problem. And I'm like, whoa. What point do you get to learn that? In what dungeon do I have to go to in order to pick up the brown belt or red belt skill of a double outer product or a triple outer product? And I think it would be amazing if there was a course that existed out there that literally used these, you don't need to use the karate belt colors, but that just has some kind of, you progressively scale up, and the white belt, you're showing the 1 plus 2 or 1 2 3 plus 4 5 6, all that stuff. But I think that the purple belt, brown belt, red belt, and black belt topics, we don't touch those as much. And I would love to have a series of Arraycast episodes where we talk about the you have to go to some special dungeon to put some tool or skill in your tool belt. Because I don't actually know how to acquire those. Arguably you could say that the tacit programming stuff is up there. But that's just because I haven't.
No, but you can do simple tacit programming. You can do advanced, completely explicit programming too, I would say. But there is actually a video series that Richard and I did on the rank and the rank operator and dyadic transpose. Those are that pair. I call them the keys to the array kingdom, because everything else is just specific manipulation. You're doing things, but dyadic transpose is what you need to, or generalized transpose, you want to call it that. You need that to put things into the right position so that you can chop your arrays using the rank operator in the way that you want. And then you need to manipulate things back again to where they came from. And so we have this series of videos where we build it up And I want to boast a little bit, and a shout out to a customer of ours that I help. Maybe I don't know if I should mention his name, so I'll not do that. But we have a customer that I help quite often with various language related things, usually sometimes some technical things. And lately, I've managed to get him to really use the rank operator like properly. So now he's wielding double ranks, function, rank specification to do things. And that's black belt rank usage.
See, this is what we need to do. We need to. Should we just abolish this episode of diving into REPLs and just to talk about this?
We can come back to this another time.
Yeah, we'll table this and start talking about REPLs and IDEs like we agreed to. But we should have an episode where how they have those videos on YouTube where they classify like Pokemon as S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier. We should do the same thing, but like with these. I'll build a little app and we can drag and drop. And the thing is the usage of these primitives like fall into different categories, right? Like what you're saying here, like double rank, like that's a black belt skill, but like just using rank itself is probably not black belt. It's probably not white belt, but it's somewhere in between. And so that's the thing is, there's you can learn an operator or a function in its like canonical, like the way it's used most of the times. But then like if for instance like the not equal scan, like that is a use of the scan operator that like is above the just like learning scan. And so I think it would be like fantastic if we could go through a bunch of primitives and like the different uses of the primitives, create some little like tiered thing, and then over time create episodes like, all right, we're going to do a black belt episode today on double rank, or, a red belt episode today on some other topic. I think that would be fantastic because, I'm not that I'm a barometer for our listeners, but I know I would love to have a bunch of brown, red, and black belt episodes talking about these advanced topics, the same way that we're gonna have like the primitive talk episodes. But the usage of this stuff.
There should be like a color mode on Apple Card where like it colors the entries in Apple Card, but the built color of using this expression, this function, it's like this is advanced. It's funny you mentioned the dungeon thing. Did I ever tell you about I think it was called Rune Master. Ever told you about
that? Yes, it has come up on the podcast, and I also stumbled into it at one point during my APL deep diving. It's a little like game online that you can play, right?
Yeah, dungeon crawler game.
Yeah.
And it's not done yet. I'm stuck in some technicalities of JavaScript that it's written in. These days, I should probably just start over and vibe code the whole thing. But that basically is that kind of feeling is what I wanted, right? Where you're fenced in by the level that you're at, and as you acquire skills that you can show through trials in this dungeon, that you know how to wield these runes, right, the APL glyphs, then that opens doors to you to access other problems in the dungeon that requires those kind of skills.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a ton of great ideas here. Like, I'm not a huge video game person, but I know that like skill trees are like a big thing. Like, there's what's that really popular video game where it's like Shadow something? Anyways, I know people that have played it like 10 times in a row because it's got so much like replayability. And it won Game of the Year, and it's like a, I don't know, 2D. Anyway, someone
you need to acquire the monetic rank
exactly
application to go to dyadic rank application. Then you need dyadic rank application to progress to multi-rank application.
Yeah. But I would go, if you had one of those with like a skill tree, I would go down the tacit route as quickly as possible, because there's nothing that irritates me more is when I'm doing an APL challenge and they're like, no, you can't use, you got to wear it where you're missing the braces. And I'm like, I don't need the braces.
Yeah, at least we don't do that in the APL challenge. Once you progress to answering with a function, you can do anything you want.
Right, yeah.
It's only in the early days we had to do it exactly the way we tell you to do it, because otherwise you don't acquire those skills to progress.
Yeah. But I'm glad we had this little mini episode. It turned into kind of a less of a mini and more of a medium episode within an episode. We will, maybe that's what we'll do next. We'll do our primitive and primitive usage classification, and then we'll set up a bunch of topics. Max in the chat, or Meme God, I should say, says, which belt would 𝗏𝗢𝗆𝗀𝘆 be? Probably black. I mean, the question is, what does 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏s mean? You can read and understand the 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏s project, or you can
that's
just
very different from just compiling your code using
exactly.
𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏s. That's
It's
pretty
probably
straightforward.
well, but that's the thing is it's not even an APL thing to get 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡s compiling. It's just like a build system.
Yeah, that's not it. But reading it, I mean, I should say a different way. And 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏s isn't as tested as it used to be. It's not very tested anymore. The code base. There was a time when it was very tested. But I think there's a whole different thing. There's a different dimension on that entirely than the notation. So one is your style. You're writing explicit as writing tacit. Another thing is that dream that Aaron-Sue has, that people will use the array languages for those kind of problems where that people haven't even dreamt of being able to apply them, and having benefits of simplicity, of conciseness in doing things that people have otherwise made very verbose by using array languages, using techniques that people didn't even imagine you could do. So the point of 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏s, I think actually we're supposed to say 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡s these days. As in like the
𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡s?
fish. Yeah, as in like the fins on a fish, on a cod fins. So because it's not defense anymore, because it can do transfins too. So anyway, you could misunderstand 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏s as being Aaron just wants to show off his tacit skills, which he doesn't really do anymore, or his coding skills. But really, what Aaron wants to show is that it is possible to compile even difficult to compile programming languages as a sort of single pass parallel thing. Right? Normally, you go through code in a sort of linear fashion, and he wants to show that you don't have to do that. You can take an array-based approach of the whole bag of potatoes rather than one potato, two potatoes, to compiling a language. The language that requires context, like APL. That's really what he wants to show. And then there are some other things that you could do in the same sort of style. And his apprentice Brandon has tried to do something similar with parsing YAML using APL. So definitely a black belt thing is being able to take a subject that is not traditionally considered an array approachable subject, and applying successfully, of course, the array approach to it. And notice this is a completely different dimension than the notation itself.
Yeah. There could be a whole world. We'd start with the primitive black belt arena, and then there's there's like probably
right function,
8 other arenas,
and array structures. Right, there's also how do you structure your data so that it's amenable to good application of the tools you've got in your array toolbox. Right, that's also outside of the language itself.
Yeah.
And you can get better at that. There are all kinds of optimization techniques. Right, never mind the primitives themselves, but like how do you run things fast by being sympathetic to the machine that you're running on? Like having a mental model of the memory layout of your data, the internal representation of the data, allows you to predict what the performance is going to be like.
Right.
And that's like you can also get better belts in that subject. I mean, there are all kinds of techniques that you could get belts in. So and really everything to do with computing, I mean, you could involve in this, but this is way off tangent.
Yeah. All right, so we will, listener, look forward to a future episode where we S tier or karate belt rank primitives, and we'll start there and then we'll see where we get to. I'm gonna close the karate belt. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
By the way, do you know that the Apple Card is loosely ordered by belt on the entries?
I had no idea. No, I thought I don't think I've ever thought,
because
I'm
uses a static ordering, right? It never, you might think that it's like sorting things somehow, but it's not. It doesn't sort by relevance or anything like that. There's no smart features. There's literally a table of entries, and it literally just does a search for all your space separated search terms, unless you use slashes for regex, whatever. And then it just filters away rows that are not matching. That's how it works. So the ordering that you get individual things, if you get the two same lines in two different queries, they will always be in the same order, namely the original order in the table, the grand table of everything that Apple Cart contains. And that table is ordered loosely by difficulty or in inverse simplicity, which is why if you look at the entire table, the first thing it has is just 𝗔𝗿𝗏𝗆, the constant empty numeric vector. That's like the simplest thing you could possibly have. And then it goes to monetic right tag, which is just a monetic identity function and its uses. And then it does the left tag, which is also an identity function, but the one that's slightly more complicated because it does a funny thing about the right side becomes the left side, that kind of thing. And then it goes to plus, which is like the simplest arithmetic function. And then minus, and then times, and so on.
I think the tricky part there is that it sounds like they're contained both definitions in the glyph. Where I would say for our ranking operation or ranking episode, you want to split it to like, because for me, like I would say that. Wow, what is the simplest? It's all philosophical, but for me, like iota is like the very first thing I ever typed in to try 𝗡𝗢𝗆. So I consider iota like what a sequence of numbers. You learn how to do that like very quickly, but dyadic iota, that's a different thing. Yes, it's the same primitive, but that is in a whole different.
Even monetic iota on a vector, right? That's also not so obvious.
Right. Oh, and
do you even know?
I was going to say, let me know.
Iota 0? Do you know?
Sorry.
What is iota 0?
Iota 0. Nothing?
Well, it can be nothing. It has to be something, right?
I mean, I just did it in 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which I'm not sharing anymore. It's an enclosed, empty. It's got the angle brackets. Yeah. And then it's enclosed in a box. Try 𝗡𝗢𝗆. It's the same thing. It's just formatted differently because it's nothing for the inner thing, and that's kind of what I meant by nothing.
Well, it's something which contains nothing. Yeah, but those kind of things, right? A primitive that might be superficially simple, but explaining why this is the result you get is maybe not so obvious. So anyway, there's a question in the chat also. Can you reverse sort the Apple Cart results? No, not in the web interface. But yeah, you can extract things yourself. But you can also just scroll to the bottom if you want to read it in reverse. So, well, why would you want to do that? You want the most complicated thing first?
Yeah, Max is trying to do things on hard mode. Anyways, we definitely should. I have a hard stop at 11:30, which is in 42 minutes. So we definitely should. Wow. Before we get to the halfway mark.
Switch to our subject.
Yeah. Switch to our topic for today. I mean, like I said, technically we were inside a REPL array box.
Oh yeah.
So we weren't entirely off topic. We just took a couple tangents. So today, we're talking about. I mean, I think Adam, you were the one that had this idea. Because I had announced as an announcement on one of the previous Arraycast episodes, it might have been the first one where we came back. I had this YouTube video ranking REPLs where I was on a number of criteria saying, try 𝗡𝗢𝗆𝗆 is better than, or I guess I didn't say that, but, 𝗡𝗢𝗆𝗆 is better than try 𝗡𝗢𝗆𝗆 is better than, the cap REPL based on these criteria. And then you said, Adam, I would love to do an episode where we just deep dive on the different REPLs and we just share our thoughts on like what's good, what's bad, or what's missing that we wish was there. And also too, this is a way to like demo and show folks maybe some features that they're not aware of. I might not even be aware of them because, I spend most of my time now in Arraybox, and before then, I spent most of my time on the online REPLs. Every once in a while, I would open Ride for dialogue, and I would always have cap because the cap GUI is so much better than the online REPL. But that's the thing is, if the online REPL is good enough, I tend to not want to go to like a application because I'm usually programming in the small when it comes to this stuff. I'm not launching a workspace with, 50 different or 100 different functions and state. I'm solving small problems, if not small to medium problems that can be done on an online REPL. Anyway, so I'm not sure if you want to share your screen and where we want to start.
I can share my screen. You might get a bit like overwhelmed by my screen. I've tried arranging the windows on my screen and completely failed at doing so. So we'll see what happens here. And I'm not even doing all of them. So I'm just doing like a little subset that I.
Well, this might end up being part one, or some of them might get dropped on the floor. But we'll see.
So what do you what do you say to this? So. Okay, so we're just getting through what I've got on my screen, which is just some REPLs, right? This is dialog write. That's the remote and also non-Windows REPL that we have. There's one that I haven't put up here, which I guess I should.
And for the audio listener, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different windows, or at least that I can count.
I'll bring up the next one in a moment. Over here, that's the Windows dialog REPL. This is the 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪 REPL, or session, whatever you want to call it, IDE. This is 𝗦𝗢𝗪 down here. This is the 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪 going on here. This is the online 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪 APL, which this actually has 2 sections, 2 different ways to run that over there. And this is the APL 64, which is the new APL Plus. And then with tiny little font size, I'll try to make that bigger in a moment. This is the dialog terminal interface. So it's text-based thing that can run as well. Look at that here. And they all work. They all have their upsides and their downsides, and they have their fans and their detractors. And then what we don't have here is BQN, TinyAPL, 𝗦𝗛𝗢, and we've got nothing QK related at all. There's right. There are so many array languages these days that we haven't even touched on. There's 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪, and there are many, and some of them have online REPLs, some of them have offline ones, some of them can, and I say REPL here loosely for like everything. I use the word REPL about some of these things, but often the strict meaning of REPL is just what you basically got in a command line interface on your OS, like where you input the line of text, possibly like multiple lines because it's reps, and then you press enter and you get a result back, and you can do it again. You might have some fancy features like recalling previous statements, things like that, but that's basically it. It's very simple. But then there's also the possibility of more interactive user interface elements. So even this that runs in the terminal, I can open. So we've got a status bar that shows various things here. And I can open a window. So it's got a windowing interface. Dialog's terminal thing does not have mouse support. So you have to do everything with keyboard shortcuts that you have to memorize. But it definitely can do things. It can open things. You can do full tracing and things like that. So, but everything text-based. And the other ones have the same features basically, but plus more. 𝗦𝗢𝗪 is very limited. It's still not just a REPL. It sort of have a REPL bar where you can enter things to make it more familiar to some people. But the normal thing for APLs and APL family languages is to have what we call a session, which is sort of like a log, like what scrolls up like in a OS command line. But you can go up to the previous statements and interact with them. That hasn't always been in APL, because APL started back when it was typewriter terminals on paper, and but you were able to recall previous statements and then edit them. So that did exist. And then as soon as it became screens, people started taking advantage of that, drawing, editing windows, and so on. So IDEs and with windows and trace windows and so and all that stuff has always been there in APL land. And even back when it wasn't, even it was just typewriter, you could still suspend in the middle of execution, like due to an error, or even an explicit stop that you said, stop bit. And then you could change your functions that are on the stack and then continue. So this interactivity has very much been there. And the development of that has been in parallel to what the rest of the world went with. I don't think there were any early IDEs that had the sort of interactivities that APL had, even back in the typewriter days. And then the way that APLs work, especially like core APL and APL dialects, is then become very different from how other programmers work. A lot of people that come to APL, they go like, oh, right, I edit my text files and then I run it. And if I look at the error message and then I change my code and I start over again. But that's not how APLs work. They will often do a single run of their function. That's a typical workday. They've got some top level function, and they'll run that once at the beginning of the day. And then they just have that stack, and they go in and out of various levels of sub functions that they're calling the whole day, and they hit errors, and they edit the functions and fix the problems and continue execution. Only at the end of the day they could shut down the system. That's very different than people that start over and over and over and over every time there's an error. Right? So we've got facilities to inspect what's going on the stack, and there's super tight, especially in APL. I think of all the array languages, the one that has the most of this. And it's not just dialect, it's all the APLs have super tight integration between the language and the development environment. So it's like really an underscore on the I and IDE. Other languages might have something they call an IDE, integrated development environment, but it's so integrated that you cannot separate them. The people that was talking about, oh, we should have like a language engine, where other tools can like call into an APL executor core that then crunches the data and sends the results back. But you cannot cut with a knife the language, the array crunching parts, away from the IDE parts. They are sort of intricately connected. In dialog and also other APLs, commercial APLs, they do have special interpreters that are runtime interpreters for actual delivery of end user applications. And those you can't access necessarily the IDE parts, but though they might actually be there hidden inside, just sort of prohibited. But other than that, it's very much the same thing. You can't really separate it. And just give you an example of that. So let's say I want to open an edit window. So in many languages and IDs and so on, you might use menu bars, and in some APL IDs you can do that as well. You go up and like, okay, create a new module, function, whatever it might be, and then it creates that. But you can also always do it with a function or command. So I want to create a function foo, and it opens up here. Now, syntactically speaking, this is a function and this is an array. I just applied a function to an array, and it had a side effect of opening up an editor that I can then use to manipulate the function foo that doesn't quite exist yet. But because this is just a normal APL function, this is just a normal APL array, if I insert the reverse glyph here, I'm now editing oof instead. Right? This is just normal APL. And if I insert an each over here, then I'll be editing F and O, and they're all here. Right? You can't necessarily see that they're all here, but if I go, we've got window. So we can see here, this might be a little small. We can see the editor currently has open foo and oof and o and f. We actually tried opening o twice, but it knows that it's the same thing, so it opened it only once. This is just APL code. I can take this and I can embed that into my normal code. So this sort of breaks the whole mold you have of what even is an IDE. Is this just the language? And the language has in self-editing features?
Well, I guess the more important question is does it matter? I mean, I don't actually spend a ton of time thinking about REPL versus IDE. I went and asked Gemini, is there a umbrella term for REPL and IDE? And it gave a really long explanation, but the summary is no. There's not a word. It suggested programming environment, but let's be honest. Here on the Arraycast, we're not about to introduce something into the wider vernacular at large, and it's not going to get picked up. So I think we are just stuck calling them REPLs and IDEs. But I mean, it begs. I was thinking while you were explaining all this, like, what do you call, 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪? Typically, when I see folks doing 𝗦𝗛𝗢 programming and they're not in the 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪 pad, Kai uses, I think it's VS Code, which is a code editor in my mind. But it uses a plugin. So, like, what is a code editor plus a plugin? Does that equal?
Yeah.
Does that equal an IDE? Because it's clearly not a REPL.
VS Code, it can take advantage of language engines. So you can have, like, okay, VS Code itself doesn't really know about the programming language, but you have a plugin, and the plugin contacts some other thing that's outside that does know about the language and can query things. And sometimes I say, like, that RIDE, which is used to at least stand for Remote IDE, is not an IDE at all. I like to say that it's pretty dumb. It's just an HTML renderer, because in fact behind this remote IDE is actually a real IDE, either one of these, the command line ones, or one of these, the Windows one, where the interpreter itself has the graphic facilities. So if I type something here, you might think, oh, right, it looks like it's the whole integrated thing, but I believe with a little bit of cleverness, you can't actually see what I'm doing here, but I'm clicking in my taskbar, and I think I will be able to find the window behind it. There you go. So what's going on here is actually, I did not type this 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗪. I can make this a little bit bigger. You can see it. But anything I type over here happens over here. So what's actually happening here is that this IDE, this language engine, which is the same thing, is in charge completely. And this RIDE here is just a front end that renders a user interface for this language engine. So this is a whole different concept of IDE than, again, something else. The something like VS Code, did you say, is a code editor? When I open something up here and I edit that, it might look like the source is actually here in RIDE, in this window, but it's not. All that happens here is that RIDE sends this information back to the interpreter that lives over here, and it keeps track of the source code. Source code lives inside here. It has loaded in here, and RIDE has no idea. Now that there are no windows that are open, RIDE does not even know that foo exists or has a specific definition or anything. Everything lives over here. So what is RIDE even?
Yeah, I think it's a fool's errand in 2026 to try and taxonomize this stuff, because it's just, we used to live in a world that was simpler. And now, in between REPLs and IDEs and code editors and plugins and language engines or language servers, it's like, honestly, there should be a new term. Like Gemini's suggestion, programming environment. It seems like a decent one, right? It's just an environment to which you're programming. And
I think it's something you have to invent a new term for. Yes, a programming environment, even if it isn't a technical term, everybody will understand. That's an environment where you can do the programming.
Right.
Whether the actual code execution happens there in that environment, like it does in the Windows IDE here, or it does in the TTY version that we have, or it does in any of the online REPLs that are running, like WASM or a JavaScript implementation of the programming language, or whether the actual execution happens somewhere else in a language engine, or whether it's just a front end that's a graphical rendering, but the whole logic of which windows are open and so on is actually somewhere else. That doesn't really matter.
Right.
It really doesn't. Unless you lose your internet connection, in which case it does matter. But yeah, so I think with that out of the way, this is just the introduction, basically, so we know what are we even talking about. So we're talking about programming environments where you have some sort of text field, either single line or multi-line, where you can enter some array language code, and ideally there's some additional features that makes your life nicer, right? At the very bare minimum, being able to recall previous entered expressions and edit expressions. And it wasn't always like that, back in the typewriter terminal days on paper, you type a letter, that letter basically stays there forever. You can't, there's no backspace did that. It went back, moved the cursor backwards, but it didn't remove the letter that you just typed. And there's a little bit of, like, as a fun thing, there's a little bit of a remnant of that still in dialog. So if I type say a circle, and I go back with the circle and I type a vertical bar, I get the reverse symbol. The point is, like, the circle doesn't go away; it doesn't get overwritten by the new character. It's actually false. It says down here in the corner, it's in the replace mode. Right? I can switch that between insert mode and replace mode. It's not if replace mode. It's overtype mode, overstrike mode. And dialog has a little remnant of that left. I'm not sure if other APLs have any remnant of that left. It used to be even more in the really old days. It used to be that, like, let's say you typed an L and it was a mistake and you wanted to type an E. Then you could actually type an E or an F even on top. So, like, imagine you type an F on top of an L, it becomes an E, right? Because you get the top and the middle bars and the bottom bar, things like that. You could do. If it looks right, then it would be right. It would do all the math for that. So even for non-APL symbols, even like type an S and then type a vertical bar on top, and you get a $sign, even though that's not syntactically valid APL. But hey, it looks like a $sign. Better be. So then from there, we built up more and more features and hand-holding and niceties and helps and so on. You've got syntax coloring in some of them. We got autocomplete in some of them. Multi-line entry of things depending on whether the language supports that kind of thing. Language bars, as you can see, that helps you to enter the Unicode glyphs. And yeah, that keyboard shortcuts for doing various actions, even macros. You can set your own keyboard shortcuts to do things. Output formats, like we've already seen when you do an IOTA 2.3. Notice Ride is just following along over here, just mirroring everything. It's the same thing, but there are different ways that we could show this, right? So we got facilities. So in the early days, we would have like functions that would draw arrays in certain ways. And then it became built in, and we just showed an example of a user command.
Well, actually, let's pause here. So this is the default in, I believe, Cap and TinyApple. I could be wrong about that, but I'm almost positive it's the default in Cap. What's I didn't actually know this was configurable, and I just thought this was like artistic choices, and it kind of confused me because when you use this Mac style, if you just do IOTA 5, it boxes it with some arrows. And I've always noticed that they have, like, depending on the implementation, there's like different symbols. Sometimes you get the little enclosed horseshoe. I'm seeing the tilde at the bottom here. Sometimes they got arrows. Yeah. What the heck's all this stuff? I mean, what are we talking about here?
There is documentation for this, but I can just briefly say this is a very old function in the APL world. It's not specific to dialog. It's an old function called display, which you could look at. And it takes with the advent of nested arrays, then the default clean display form, which we can see what that looks like, became sort of harder to read, right? You can sort of see because of the double spacing that these are like 6 small vectors of vectors, but there are also limitations to this, because if we try to do, if you do like 3,4 reshape enclose 2,2 reshape 𝗬𝗎𝗪, so this is pretty horrible, right? You can't really tell the difference between this and whether they would just be like, notice this, these two are 2 separate vectors, but down here we've got a 2x2 matrix, and you can't tell.
Right. Yeah.
So then somebody wrote, or some people worked on, made a function that drew this instead. Actually, originally it was drawn not with these nice line drawing characters that make this up, because they weren't available. So they would use like minuses and pluses in the corners. The arrows were there, and all of this has significance. So what's happening here is that every arrow indicates an axis. So there's a trailing axis over here that has length 2 in this case. There's a leading axis going down. There's an outer, so this is nested arrays. So there's the outer array is also a matrix. You can see that. And the bottom left has a type indicator. The tilde means, let me change the font here and make it a little bit clearer, I think. The tilde means it's numeric. The epsilon means it's nested. There are other possibilities. If it's just a straight out line, like here, that means it's text. It's undecorated, basically, it's text. So if we go in like format each of these, now you can see that the only thing that visibly changed was the decorator in the bottom left. Instead of being the tilde for numbers, it means this. If we try to write like ABC 1 2 3, it says it's nested. If you do this, so it's a 4-element vector, that the first element is character and the remaining elements are numbers. It says plus, it means more than one type, which means it's actually lossy, right? You can't tell what's what. If I write these 2 arrays, so they look the same. So the format isn't perfect, but it gives you a pretty good image of what's going on, with some hints to what's going on. And there are other decorators. There are some other things. If you try to do a many-dimensional array, so we can see how it sort of tries to stack up leading axes. It's basically decoration on the old format. So this is how it would look without any decoration. And then we just add boxes and add indicators to show that we've got axes. But it's not very clear where exactly the axes are. The spacing sort of shows it as well. These are layers, and then you've got a cube here, and then it's a hypercube. So that's what's going on. But there are other ways you can draw it.
What was the first expression that you tested? It was, because I'm doing this in ArrayBox, I'm testing. So cap seems to be doing what you're showing here. TinyApple does something slightly different. I don't know exactly. Yeah. What was this? So this one more up.
This one
was. So you're basically making a matrix and then enclosing it and then doing another reshape on it.
Yeah.
So TinyApple for, if we do 2, 3, and so if we enclose that and then we go 3, 4. So yeah, TinyApple does something different. It doesn't look like they use the, type indicators. They just use the arrows everywhere. Although
there's some variations on this as well, and this is just the built-in one, so to say, the one we can enable with this boxing user command. It's just one of the many variations on this that exist.
I discovered that in J when I was implementing the boxing, that by default they use the terrible ASCII things, but then there was, I want to say it was 𝗔𝗿𝗍𝗪𝗀, aka Oracle. If it wasn't that individual, it was someone else. They pointed me towards the fact that you can set, like you're showing here, the settings of these.
You can switch that,
Yeah, and it was some horrible incantation that I had to put into whatever the execution, but then it looks a lot nicer. So it looks like, from what I can tell, that
this is the REPL, right? So the GUI thing, and it has menu items for some of those horrible incantations you would otherwise have to enter to switch this.
Right.
So this REPL is sort of bare bones, but it has the basic stuff, and it has some niceties, and and some help. The configuration as well, like, is very bare bones. So here, so you can configure it, but all it does is it opens up this
equivalent of a JSON
thing.
file or some kind of YAML file back
Well,
in the
yeah,
day.
it's like an ini file thing. Dialog has a proper GUI for configuration, right? Where with lots of tabs and settings. Not everything you can configure like this. Sometimes you have to like go and configure it in configuration files otherwise. But at least it's got some GUI, like capturing keystrokes and things for setting up shortcut keys. Same thing goes for RIDE. It's got this nice looking GUI. It comes up on a different screen, of course. Right? You can modify the keyboard even, right? Set multiple keys here. That's got lots of things you can configure. Again, it's not everything, but so some things you need to configure otherwise. But the most common things you can set.
And so, is there, just to wrap up the pretty printing of arrays, like, so, because I guess this came about due to the introduction of nested arrays.
Yeah, at that point it became necessary to
and so the difference between this pretty printing, like when you're looking at a nested array, in the like what do we call these modes? Are they min and max like display?
But there are actually a lot. I mean, I could show you the help for it. There's a lot of settings here. So this is the style. It's called officially the style. So there's none, which is like just plain, like you saw before, with no decorations. Then there's the min style. So if we go up and take our example, well, maybe we should do a little bit more interesting example than this. We can do something like this, and okay, so here's the min style. You can't really tell the types, right? You can't, if A was a numeric character. No, sorry, if the A here was a character 1, you can't really tell what it is. So this looks like it's just numbers, but it's not. It's actually a character. But it's a very clean. It's very compact. Then there's a mid level, which is exactly the same thing as a min level, but with decorator characters on. So you can see the X's here, and now you get an indication that this 1 actually we should move right over here. 1 as you can see. You can see these two are not the same. Right? This one has a plus in the corner, and this one has a tilde. So that means this one is mixed type and this is numeric, even though they look the same. But it basically puts the indicators on the borders, like sharing border lines. But so it tries to be really compact. But that means it's also lossy. There are things it cannot really show. If we do further enclosures, then it starts padding around, and you can start seeing a bit more. And then we can turn on the style to max. And at that point, it totally blows up. Right? It becomes giant. You compare the sizes of these two. This is the same array shown in 2 different styles, but this one is way more informative. You can see exactly what's going on, whereas this one is somewhat limited in what you can see, but it's very verbose. I personally prefer the min most of the time. And now in Dialog 20, I have to plug that a little bit. There's a new thing we can do, which is the array notation. So I like this. It's maybe not as pretty as this, but it tells me exactly what I have. There's no ambiguity here at all. And not only that, the best thing with this is executable notation. So I can just go in here and say, reverse each. And that's just valid. I can reformat it. I can use, and it's got syntax coloring and so on. But this is the output value. Output values are input values, which I think is a really nice thing to have.
Very interesting. I mean,
going back to the chat, just so I haven't been following along there while I've been speaking, saying the APL session is like a debuggable shell. Yeah, Smalltalk even allows users to modify things like menu bar and color theme, and RIDE is a front end to the interpreter. Yeah, just to mention that. Look at the. Can you see that? It's tiny, but you can see the help menu item up here. So again, I can do SE is the session object. So there's a menu bar, and the menu bar has an item called help that has a caption. And I'm going to just set that caption to hello Arraycast. And now the menu item up here is hello Arraycast. Right? We can change that back again. So yeah, we can, to a certain degree, we can manipulate the IDE itself, and I can hide the menu bar. I can add my own menu items and buttons and so on. And then also mention in the chat, instead of using the boxing, I made a user command called REPL, which creates an APL expression similar to what we do with the array notation, but it just like gives you a one-liner expression for things. So if I write like, well, we can take the example from up here actually, see what it does with that here. Oh, boxing is still on. That's a bit awkward. But so notice that it returned the same thing, because this is basically the minimum or somewhat minimal representation of it, but it gives you an APL expression for something. So if I don't know what something is, I can find out. Remember I said earlier 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗪? Let's say we don't have boxing on at all, nothing. This is what we get. So this is a nice example. Like you get something like this. What am I going to do with this? It's nothing. Well, it's something. I can select it. It's represented by 2 spaces. So we can turn boxing on. Box on. Style minimal. Now we get this. Not very useful, right? We can turn the medium level. This helps a little bit. It tells us, oh, it has one empty axis. That's what this means, and it's numeric. So, but actually, it's not the full truth. You might think this is the same thing as just the empty vector, but it's not. You can go to the max level, and now we can see that. Okay, you can see there are no.
This looks like we're joining some kind of dark religion or something like that. We've got to worship this.
So what this is saying is that there are no x's, meaning the outer frame here is a scalar. It's nested. It has a single element inside, which has a single axis. Instead of the arrow, there's this symbol meaning it's an empty axis. So it's a length 0 vector that has the prototype of 0 because it's numeric. So for this, you can discern what it is, but you have to really think and know things. In array notation, you do the same thing. It gives you this, right? It just says it's 𝗦𝗀𝗀𝗪, which is nice. You can understand that. And I think the REPL is going to give you the same thing. Yeah, okay, our boxing is still on, so it looks a bit funny. Yeah, it says it's just this, 𝗦𝗀𝗀𝗪 again. But you can have weird things that are sort of hard to understand, like 0, 6, 1, 8, reshape, enclose, a null 0. Notice that? We got nothing, right? Literally, it printed nothing. So what is this array? Right? Let's turn boxing on again. Yeah, we can do box, style min.
This is where if I was doing serious editing, I would cut in the F1 box.
Yeah. But so if I turn it even to mid, we get like a lot of white space, right? It's useless. If you turn it to max, we get this. Okay, now we can begin to see that this is actually a giant empty array, right? With lots. So we see the outer level here is this. It's a empty axis followed by a non-empty axis with a non-empty axis and a non-empty axis. So a rank 4 array. That's this, right? Every element is this. Maybe we should make the numbers here a bit smaller so we just see it's easier to see what's going on. And array notation will give us this, right? So this is also a nice thing. So that we can see the square brackets represent rank basically, and we can see that the leading axis is compressed to length 0, right? So it has a leading empty axis followed by 2 axes that are non-empty, and then the innermost axis, the trailing one, which is a vector axis then, right? So that's in here, and then we the content, actual content, is a space, the prototypical character, a null, and the zero. So this is a very nice way to see it as well.
That's wild. This is definitely like at least brown belt level stuff.
Yes, there are a lot of options for this kind of thing, and various IDEs will have various ways of showing it. There are some of the newer things that use both, like both thick and thin, and double struck line drawing characters to show things. BQN has its own thing with like dotted lines to show things. And there are lots of different ways you can get to these things. You don't have to print it into the session. Dialog also has things like it's called show view. I don't even use this anymore. No, not show view.
I mean, someone in the chat just mentioned display.
Yeah. Yes, there's display as well. Display is just a temporary display.
That's what I thought
It's
actually
just,
Repr was going to be, because I was thinking I probably still prefer min as well, but in certain cases you might want to see all the info. Like honestly, there's an analogy for the Haskell programmers out there. They have I think it's :I and :T. But :T is like for type information of an expression, and :I is like all the information. So it's type plus some other stuff. And this is like kind of the equivalent, right? You've baked in the type information to like a legend that is completely invisible, but now I understand.
So here we I mean, it's all the information is available, right? But so here we, as I mentioned in the chat, if you use the display user command, that's like temporarily having the boxing set to the maximum just for a single expression, and if this sets it to min just for a single expression. There's no setting for not to min, sorry, to mid for single expression. There's no corresponding thing for min. But there are actually a lot of, in the defense workspace, there are a lot of extra functions for showing things in various ways. So if we can copy, I think it's called DSP. So this is yet another minimalist way to show things. So it like dispenses with the outer borders and just draws the bare minimum to separate things from each other. And there's one called this display R, and I think there's display S. So we can see. So this one it gives you numeric information. It's saying this, instead of drawing a little arrow, it says this is an axis of length 2 and axis of length. So this is, it gives us the shapes everywhere, and this gives you the depth. So this, instead of saying it's nested, it says it has depth 2, and this axis is length 2, length 3, 2, and then this is numeric. So it gives you all that information. Display S gives you the axis plus the shape information written there, right? So we can see that this is a 2x3 with the decorators and so on. So there are lots of variations of things, and some of them even take left arguments where you can further customize exactly what you want. Do you want the text centered, or do you want it right adjusted and vertically centered? And lots and lots of options for things. And then some REPLs have this built in various forms. And we have only talked about display of arrays. It's also display of functions. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could spend some time on that. I mean, I've been trying to bake that stuff. The train tree view is there in dialog, and so BQN has explain. Cap has a thing called structure viewing, but I've played around with it. It breaks frequently for the examples that I was testing. And then J has something called, I actually can't remember what it's called, but it is the equivalent. It's horizontal instead of vertical. And I think, I mean, it's kind of it's personal opinion, right? But I think by far the dialogue tree train is by far the best. BQN.
So you can There's a nice thing you have in the dialog IDE. Sorry, with JID is you can actually choose the display forms from the menu instead of having to write like weird incantations to enable them for discoverability. I really like that. I'm going to add this if everything goes according to my plans. I'm going to add this kind of thing to dialog as well. I want to overhaul the whole way you do output.
I also noticed that in the dialogue editor, all of the expressions now are syntax highlighted, which is something I complained about at some point. Is that?
Oh yeah, that's.
It used to be.
Yeah, that's something you can configure.
Or it was
so
configurable.
You can choose whether you can choose whether it's only the current input line or all the history as well.
There you go.
So yeah, it's a nice thing to have. I definitely like having syntax coloring like that. And then of course you get syntax colored output when you do array notation output, which is really awesome. So this is the default display form. We can see that as well over here in J. It does much the same thing, just basically tokenization things. But if you turn boxing on, then the default style for tacit things is boxing. So we get this. So this tries to show you the structure of this average idiom, where the plus and the slash bar are bound more tightly together, and then you have an outer level of a 3 train. It's the 3 boxes like this, and then we can switch it to to the tree mode. As you get this, which is what you prefer. But there are other options. There's also the parens, which might be useful for like white belt. So it just fully parenthesizes whatever you give it. So you can see that how things bind together, and that's pretty nice, especially for weird things that you might not be so obvious. How things bind together.
Are those the 3 modes? Parens, tree.
I think there's one as well, which is I think def. And that one tries to minimize the number of parentheses instead.
Okay, so the anti-parens.
Yeah, but it will resort to parens when necessary. So like if we write something like this, so it will preserve the parentheses because you have to have them there. The reason I didn't want to pull that up at first is because I think it has a bug in it. So if you take this function, like that's just an example, decrement, increment type thing, that's a mistake. It should have parenthesized at least one of them, because this is not the same function because of stranding.
Right.
So that I tend to not. I'm not sure really what the point is either. It's just trying to reconstruct. Here you'll do it right. And if we turn on the tree view instead, which is also what I prefer, by the way, in general, then I think that looks very nice. You can see these are the 2 operands that are bound to this operator, and these are the 2 operands that are bound there, and then these bind together to a two tree. It also means that like a fork really looks like a fork, like a trident.
Yeah. It's quite nice.
And this is just display form, right? There's a lot of stuff that can be added to an IDE. BQN has, like by default, recognizing that certain arrays look like sound definitions or like image definitions or video definitions even, and then we'll create a little media player and show those things. That's also something I would like to do, to add. It's not really that hard to recognize things. Arrays that are too big to display, really. But sometimes we do that. You can make fun patterns. So, and then yeah, sometimes we make the font size really small, so you can to sort of draw pictures in the IDE using character art, which I think is cute.
Right. Yeah.
And
I've done that before with the Game of Life-ish kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another feature that you can have when you have this interactivity with the editor windows, that if we make an array, so here's the alphabet, and I can edit that. Again, notice I'm just applying a function to, oh, where did it go? In here. Where did they go? I don't know. That's funny. Oh, hold on 1 second. I think it's just might have popped up another window. Let me clear everything here. It's classic again. There are various modes that we haven't come into even. I don't know what I've done. Oh, I think I know what it is. I'm actually running this thing that has that's ride. Okay, let's switch over to ride. It's the same thing. Okay, so here is a character array, and if I make changes to the array, then they get updated in real time inside the editor. So there are lots of fun things you can do with that, playing around. Then there are features like you probably don't want to even think about should be there, but have to be there. Like in the menu bar for the dialog IDE, you can export to an exe file. Like you can create a standalone application that nobody can even tell is written in dialog APL. That's just completely packaged with an icon and everything. Right? Choose an icon file, and we can make a console application of those things. Choose the settings for Windows when we're running it. Version information, all that stuff you get when you look at the properties. Those things need to be there because it's all fun and games playing around with array languages, but there are actually people out there that use this, for real work, actual applications that get shipped to users that have to boot up and they use them, and then and they make money of it. So you have to be able to package a whole thing. That's also part of the IDE to do that. There's access to help in various ways. Again, this is, of course, every IDE has its ways to do this. One thing I would like to do is that we haven't done yet, but sort of working on that as a quiet project in the background, is that the first time you start, it would be nice if the IDE would, I think so at least, would say, welcome. It knows whether it's the first time you start. Or it could give you the options to not show this again or show this again, that kind of thing, where it's like, hey, let me give you an intro tour. Up here is the language bar. This is the session. This is where you type things, so that people can get going a bit faster.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have to do one of these for all the different, because we've only scratched the surface, and this is just basically APL, and we've only got a couple minutes left.
Yeah, there's just a preview of some things that exist here. This is APL 64. I don't use this normally. I have a license for it. This is Dialog's, I think, most serious competitor in the commercial space. They have completely rewritten the IDE. Right? Dialogs is a continuous evolution from the early 80s. This Dialogs APL 64, which is the language is basically the same thing as APL Plus, has a ton of features. I haven't even looked at everything. It's both language features, not in primitives, but in system functions. They've got loads and control structures and things, but also the IDE has a lot of features. I'm not sure how much of it I would actually want. But they do have some cool things. Like you can go into the idiom manager, and we've got the whole, it's basically like Apple Cart thing, but structured with an interface, and you can add your own user idioms, and it has got yeah, well, you can see got lots of stuff, and you can search. The session itself, like the REPL part, has some settings. So you have this history format, and I'm not even really sure how this works. Now it's set to classic, which means that the things are this. I don't think this works. No, it does. Okay. things are as you expect. But I think you can switch to like a different mode, and now you've got like an input bar like you've seen on 𝗡𝗢𝗪. And now we're typing in here instead. And it copies it up here. And I think there are things you can like select and redo and so on. I'm not really sure how this works. It's got a ton of stuff you can do, and settings for this groups. Right here you can see which outputs belong with which inputs. And it sort of remembers where things belong. I think you can choose separate input and output, so an input pane and output pane, which might be more familiar to some people. I know browsers have like a mode you can do this, and we've got our input bar down here. We can't even go into all of it. We haven't looked at dialogues things either, but we can. But just scratch the surface, just looking at the possibilities that are here. So I grew up with a good old style, basically like computer enhanced paper. So I'm used to doing things the old style. But there are new cool things that you could do, and I've actually written a library myself to do cool output stuff. Just as an experimental thing. I think I have it available here. Let's see.
And as Adam's typing this and we're winding down, if you're either watching this live or in the future, or if you're listening to the audio and you have a favorite, feature of an IDE or REPL or programming environment, find the YouTube video, leave a comment, and whenever we do a follow-up where we explore this again, we will make sure to highlight the greatest, latest features from the different programming environments. Because I'm sure that there's stuff that I definitely don't know, and probably even Adam in the other, programming environments and languages that we don't use as often.
We should have guests. Like I know about the dialogue one fairly well. Right. I know some of the APL ones, a little bit of the J things, and then things get really progressively worse and worse as we get further away from that. We should have. It's not fair that I should show these things. Now, I'm not even going to run it, but I just want to show a little tool that I made. Can you open this picture? So this is where, similar to what you saw in the APL 64, where input remains over here in the session, in the normal session, but all output goes into a separate window, which is like a rich window for output, and you can get type information and timing information and so on about when these various outputs happen and what they are. Right? So, and errors are like treated separately and so on, and you can collapse and remove pieces and so on. So there are possibilities you could. So again, what this is saying is, or hinting at, is that you can catch the events that happen when things are printed and when various things happen, and when windows are closed, the editor window closes, you can catch that event, you can intercept it, you can write your own code that manipulates the flow of things. We even have some tools that's how they work. It also means it's an open system. You can go and look at what is the code that actually does the output. It's right there for you. Right. I don't know how we should treat this. There are so many ways we can go into this, and so many dimensions, and so much.
We just have a recurring series where we're gonna grow the panel in the future. So I mean, we'll have more expertise on different IDEs in the future. And when we bring folks on, we can be just one of our questions we ask folks are the things that you know about that you can share with our listeners. So we don't need to cover, clearly we don't need to cover it all in one episode because we have tried and failed. But
we knew that's
we weren't going to hit everything. Anyways, we will make sure to link all of these in the show notes so that if you want to go check them out. I think most of these, except for APL 64, are freely available, either online or via download. So that is the nice thing about this
No,
stuff.
I even forgot one. I forgot APLX.
I actually was thinking that when you were showing all the windows, and I was like, actually, there is one that I have personally used. I don't have it on my computer right now, but at one point I did at one point have the APLX, and they have great docs. At one point they were nicer than Dialogues, but Dialogues has revamped theirs, and I'd say Dialogues
right
is
here.
better now.
So I do have it here. But yes, it doesn't, the IDE doesn't do very much interesting things, but yeah,
It's still nice. It's still minimal APL, nice for getting started. Yeah.
Absolutely, the documentation is awesome, and the IDE does have features that Dialog doesn't have either. So
Max says a last comment is saying my favorite is hint-based jumps in AV, Easy Motion, and Hop.NVim. All of which are, I think, different like tools. And I mentioned head over to the YouTube comments, but I also forgot that the main way you can reach us, as always, is contact@Arraycast. Man, I was so close. I was about to say Arraycast. Contact@Arraycast.com. We'll get it. It's Bob was doing it for 100+ episodes, and so you have to give us time to be able to say a simple email address correctly. But yeah, if you've got tips, tricks, features, or you want to message us about anything else, you can reach us there. And consider this part one of an ongoing series of editor, REPL, IDE, programming environment features. I learned a bunch of stuff. I didn't know about the min-max mode stuff, and that is very useful for understanding what the difference is. And also, too, it's nice to know that you can get type information in, like the encoding of the box. So hopefully other listeners learned something today as well. With that, I guess we will say happy array programming.
Happy array programming.
Nailed
oh man,
it.
that didn't work.
It did. It worked on
No
my
way.
end. It worked on my end.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Till next time.
See ya.